Hi, a little bit of tech talk here. If it's boring, just switch over to a different video because I want to do this very seriously. I want to talk about the differences between this analog synthesizer, the AKS by EMS versus IVCS3. IVCS3 was programmed by Alessandro Petrolati, ApeSoft, Alessandro Petrolati, and he and Eugenio Giordani made a note on ICSC about developing the app. If you want to know how this is programmed in C-Sound, as far as I can see, it's a very complex thing, and I think we must pay some tribute to these guys trying to do the real thing. But this is subjectively, in a way, from the outside to measure, is the app as good as the original? So it took me an hour and took Isotope inside and compared something. Normally this would take minimum a week to do this properly, scientifically, to get to really valuable results. But in a way I found that at some points I was really astonished how near these both tools are to each other. Apart from, of course, one is the hardware, one is heritage, and you can touch, and it's one instrument, and the app is all over the world kind of the same. But let's have a look at that and hope you get an impression. Don't do ideologies out there. Try to get to the core and try to measure, is it really valuable what I'm saying here when I say, oh, the app can never be in sound like the original. In some cases you're going to see right now here, it's quite near. So thank you to these artists, programming artists, and Alessandro Petrolati also is an artist, he's a wonderful piano player and a philosopher. So these are sophisticated guys. It's also a tribute to people like those, and like Paul Schilling and James Edward Cosby, who are providing sounds for that, and this community. Always think about people behind that, and then you're on the right track to measure, is it good or not. I think it's good.
Let's start. What we see here is that on the left side, this is the AKS. This is a sinus. I put in here a sinus oscillator 1 into output channel 1, output channel 2. So let's listen to the shape of the sinus of the AKS. This is it. And now you can listen to the sinus of the IVCS3, and you can compare both. So on the oscilloscope they look quite the same. Here the spectrum looks also quite the same and not that different. What I do now, take the different waveform, the ramp here. So left is the AKS. This is the spectrum of the AKS. So we can hear it here also. And now compare both. I make a screenshot. This is it. What we see is in the different spectra, it's not so super different, but you see here IVCS is much more clean and there's much more interferences in here. So the spectrum is quite of the same, but there's something in here and something in there, and that you can hear. So both, this is AKS, this is IVCS. So much cleaner. Okay, let's take the next waveform. IVCS, I go into square wave, oscillator 2. Oscillator 2 to output channel 1 and 2. And here I go oscillator 2, also square wave into channel 1 and 2. Put it up. Do the shaper into the middle region. Let's hear, and I try to take the same frequency and go back and do a different analyzing here. So this is a square wave, and now we go to the square wave in here. So IVCS square wave, AKS square wave, and both together you can hear some beating here. That's interesting because I routed everything through to Cubase. So that's quite okay. So next thing, what am I going to do? I put the square wave through the filter, starting at around 440 Hertz. And then we get up and you see, all the wonderful frequencies from the AKS coming up here, up to there. I make a screenshot. Okay, put it down. Next one, IVCS. Well, let's compare. So this is the AKS filter. And now I take the VCS3 filter. Even with the response, it's not reaching this intensity. And put up the shaper, no. So, next wave. Oh, here we come quite near. That's not too different from the AKS. So, well, at this point I would say the filters might differ a little bit. Maybe it depends on the potentiometers, or it depends on the algorithm of the IVCS3. It should take some more checking if it's really true. The point is, when you have the same settings in the IVCS and as you have in the AKS from the potentiometer, then they differ, of course, because the calibration of the potentiometers might also have an effect on the sound. Whatever. So here we go with ring modulation. And now upper frequency, lower frequency, let's see what happens. You see, okay, let's stay there. I'll freeze it. And now let's go to the IVCS. So let's start with the upper one here. Freeze it and have a look at the waveforms. I see some much more spectrum in here, but that maybe depends on the wave, and I did some shaping in here. I could change that. So, well, let's do some FM modulation. What's happening in there? Oscillator 2 is affecting oscillator 1 now. Let's listen. First I take oscillator 1. Now I take the lower oscillator. So something like that. I'll do the same on the IVCS now. I'm not sure, it's a little bit different. Take the low one. As I mentioned, the differences are of course in the potentiometers, and yes, of course this is a difference, but it's well meant in the IVCS3 and well programmed. Obviously, you can see it here. It's objectively not away from what the AKS does. So amplitude modulation, oscillator 1, 2 going to output 1, 2, oscillator 2 is by a square wave, manipulating square wave into the middle here, the output channel level, so amplitude goes up and down to up 100%, down 0%, let's listen to that, and speed it up until it gets these wonderful sidebands I'm expecting. Here's some sidebands come in. You see it there. And we get a different tone that's apart from the fundamental. Wow. It's quite a nice spectrum coming up. Some sweet spots in there. something around 10,000 Hertz here going on, and the fundamental is coming like a sinus. So go back to nothing. That was the AKS, and now let's listen to this baby. So in this case, oscillator 2 on the IVCS is doing the same like the AKS before, modulating the amplitude on and off via a square wave of oscillator 1 here. Let's have a listen. Waiting for the sidebands. Later. Here something happens. Spectrum gets richer. Ah yes. Compare both. Left side AKS. Here goes IVCS. Ah yeah. Up, up, up. Oh, it's coming back again in the upper region. This is crazy. This is something AKS doesn't do, and it's going higher into the frequency here. About, you see, 22,000 Hertz, and so, yeah, okay. Looks kind of the same, but I hear it more in the upper frequency. Okay, that's it, freeze it, and compare both. It's working wonderfully, you got the sidebands, and yes, I believe it's quite nice. Another thing I would like to check, and that's the trapezoid. It's a very simple patch, and trapezoid on the AKS. Here's the sound. So everything is up to the limit here, and I go for trapezoid from minus to plus. And back. So now same on the IVCS. I believe it already looks as if it's kind of the same. So go back to have a similar view here. Wow, that's not too bad. Compare both, each with the other. So at this point there's no talking that the IVCS is just a freaky clone from the surface, and obviously the things that are going on are very kind of nicely done, and I really like this. What I really love is the reverb. Don't underestimate the reverb. So this is no reverb, and now I put in the reverb. Look at that. There's something coming up in above here, and the reverb is really doing something, and I changed the frequency. Okay, freeze it. Now we do the same with the IVCS. Now it changes differently. This is quite a little bit different. It's not adding too many frequencies in the high frequency range. Now I'm gonna do what I did with the other one. Better that. It's distorting. The distortion is inside the machine. I put it down a little bit. You see, it's distorting inside. But that's okay, because spring reverbs distort in a way. So also in this case, you have a reverberation, and each of these reverb things is different. It's corroding inside, then it's behaving differently on the AKS side. And this is a representation of maybe a new spring reverb. You can even go in here in the settings. You can say, should it be 96 kilohertz? Don't forget that. If I would have chosen that, a representation might be a little bit more precise if you go to the micro representation of it. Latency is not, but there are some settings you can do. Parametric unique spring reverb algorithms. So if I would change that, I don't do that now. I might come to different results that get more into the region of the original of the AKS. Even that's what they thought about. This is really brilliant what they did. Here you have also the DK2 keyboard. I have the same here. I showed that in a different video, how you can use it. The whole thing here can also be extended by a different keyboard, and this is the typical AKS keyboard. It's that one here. I'm gonna show the real one just a second. This is the original EMS Synthi AKS keyboard. You have a representation on that too. So with the IVCS3 along, you have the opportunity to check out this and that, and I can tell you in the real world, this one is really hard to manage. I got some tones of it, it's playable, but due to the voltage of this thing, possibility to spread the keyboard, it's a hard job to get it done, and this is much easier in the IVCS3. What I find very appealing, you can put in samples here and mix up the samples with the original sounds of the IVCS3. This is something AKS cannot do. You can put in inputs to process them. One example is, we won't get fooled again by Pete Townshend, where he's processing a Lowry organ through this. I also have a video of that online. But the usage of samples, especially if you have some drones or special samples, with the opportunities of the core machine together, makes IVCS3 much more flexible than that. But in the end, you see, this is a machine that has its own character, the reverb. It depends on the wiring inside. The IVCS3 may have some longer wiring inside. You must take all these things into your aspects when you're comparing something. I believe it's not 100% scientifically really comparable, besides the subjective things and the design that Tristram Carey did, and all these things that make this a wonderful, unique machine, and only this one is a machine, and this you can do everywhere. But for educational purposes, I strongly recommend that, and not just ideology, but you have seen there are quite a few things that are quite going similar, and they put so much in it. So check it out, and I hope it was not too complicated. I tried to make it short. I could use much more days to do this here, but in a way, I'm really satisfied with that. Even when I have opportunity to use this here, but this I can take into my holidays I'm gonna have soon. So take care, and hope it was interesting and not only boring. You want to hear music, I know. So now you can listen to your music. Thanks.